Hello, everybody. I'm only going to be live for like a little while because it's already late, I know. Sorry if you're in Brazil or East Coast time and it's late. But hello, everyone in California and everyone in the Midwest and in the South. Sorry, East Coast and Brazil. I know it's like midnight and 1 a.m. for y'all. But here is, I think this is like my third night trying to get some conservatives to come argue with me about socialism. I just uploaded a video as well. It's like, it's so tired, people. It's a big thing. A lot of people were coming in my live last night and telling me like, oh my God, you know, you're gay. They would they would kill you. You know, your people in socialist countries would totally just. And I'm like, I've been to socialist countries before. I, you know, feel less safe in Texas, where I'm from. It's so funny. So I made a video about a little bit of LGBTQ history in the USSR. Really superficial, though. It's just kind of as much as you can do in a minute. Why do some people stop at socialism when, in my opinion, the end all be all is communism? I think because it's hard to get there. Or you mean like, why do some people only support socialism and then they're scared of the word communism? Just from anti-communist propaganda. We weren't meant to work our life away. We were meant to colonize? Huh? Make Earth great again. Mega vibes. We ride and save our rivers, lakes, and vates. Christian USA world emoji. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. Because under capitalism, you work your life away. Like, uh, like people I know have like 60, 70-year-old parents who are still working 5 days a week, like 40 hours a week. I can't. Something was done once beautifully. By the way, just request to join if you want to say something. I kind of can't tell from the comments if you have like a full argument you're trying to make. Aim higher, guys. We can colonize the galaxy for NATO in Jesus' name. Oh my God, I actually have a request. Let's take a look.
Socialism could never work.
Someone said something about liberal and socialism could never work. I would say, except for all the times that it has worked, you know, people don't realize, like, name a socialist country. Let's say USSR, like Russia, or China, or Vietnam, or Cuba. Like, literally all of them managed to start with socialism because they had a war-torn country. They started with nothing and were able to actually pose a threat to U.S. hegemony. So I think it kind of speaks for itself economically. I mean, it's an economic system. It's a really viable economic system. How would you describe your political evolution? Well, I guess it was probably just liberal by default. I voted for Obama and thought that would be cool. And then I started to realize, like, oh, some of his policies, like these wars we're in, and some of the government overreach is really messed up, and they're lying to us about a lot of stuff. And then Flint happened, and then I went to the Dakota Access Pipeline protests and saw how messed up that was. Like, people don't know what they're capable of. They turned off cell service in this entire area, so none of the activists could be like recording things live or sending information out of that area. And they were like military people with tanks, you know, and ARs like just standing around guarding like the rows and inches. It was like it was big wake up call that we need to organize and take our country back. People, power. I get some fun trolls. I know. The rest of the world is human rights and dignity. We are brainwashed into thinking otherwise. Yeah. When has it worked? I would say socialism worked in China. It was the fastest increase in life expectancy of any country's fastest point at any point in time in human history from 1949 to 1978. It was even before their market liberalization, so you guys can't pretend that it's capitalist. As I think, not sure. I think it kicked you out or something last time.
Listen here, liberal. I'm sorry. I wanted to do the meme so bad. Are you doing this live on an iPhone?
Yes, why?
Well, I heard that communism is when no iPhone, so I don't. I'm not sure. Like, have you ever heard of Vuvuzuela? Ever?
Y- yeah, I've met some people from Venezuela. They really don't like socialism, so I guess it can never work.
Mm, socialism debunked, absolutely owned. No, I wanted to troll, but I can't. But I love your page and I love everything you do.
Wow, thank
Um,
you.
love your videos a lot. Like I really appreciate it. And I just really,
Wow, thank you.
yeah, no,
It's
like
nice
I've
to
literally
hear.
like I send them to all my like socialist friends and I'm like, watch this shit, you know? So
I
you're
try to,
great.
I think about that whenever I make a video, like, is this actually something of substance? Can people take like the information here and build on it, understand the world a little better?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. I just that's all I had to say. I just appreciate you a lot.
Thank you.
I mean, people do this debate all the time, like my friends at least. They never join. They just talk shit in the comments. So you might be
Really?
here for a while waiting for somebody, but I'm gonna step down so you can maybe get a debate. But thank you so much.
Cool, awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
bye.
Bye. Good to hear from you. Tell me Cubans like it? I don't know. I actually met with some Cubans at a conference at Fordham University called the Conference for Normalization of U.S.-Cuban Relations last month. And I met some Cuban delegates, and they were very passionate about socialism. So I met some Cubans who like socialism. But when I went there, I think it's just like in the US or like anywhere else in the world, the majority of people are just not really involved in politics and want to live their lives and have nice things for their families and all that. But yeah, in Cuba, did notice that they knew a lot about their history and they were very passionate about their history. Even people who were more liberal and less socialist, pro Fidel or whatever in Cuba, they were still really proud of their history, their anti-colonial struggle, and how they've been able to keep people out. Someone asked, "The Great Leap Forward worked?" No, the Great Leap Forward did not work. The Communist Party of China now even says the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward were very chaotic times in China's history, and they were horrible mistakes. So this is something, it's just like a fact. The stuff did not go well. Socialism is an experiment. Uh, if you look at China, they had a population that was like 90% plus illiterate. How do you organize this country and get them together? And a lot of them spoke different languages from each other. So, mistakes were made. Meanwhile, in the US, what do we have going on? We had the Jim Crow South. Like, bad things were happening everywhere. And I think under socialism, the people have more power to, take their country back. Poland, it did not work in Poland. I don't know, was Pilsudski so great? I think, you know, a lot of Eastern Europe was being pulled from many directions. Just go to a socialist country and experience it. I've been to a socialist country before. I've been to Cuba. and it was an amazing, eye-opening trip. Everyone should go to Cuba. Go to Havana. Am I in China? No, I would love to go to China. It's a little expensive to get over there, though. Maybe I can go this year. I would love to. If America wants to continue capitalism, it must reinvest in restoring the middle class. Yeah, that's the big contradiction in American capitalism. All economic systems have like these glaring contradictions. In the US, we just don't have like a real economy. Our economy, a lot of it is finance, and like service industry things. It's really weird. Like we don't make anything here. And I think a lot of people are getting really alienated. Like there are so many talented young people who just there isn't a market for their talents here because everything's being made in mass hyper efficiently with high quality in China. So people can't they have really developed means of production. The only way people can like make and sell things here is if they're marketing it as like handmade or whatever. Have you ever been to another country? Not a lot because I'm not super rich, but I've been to Japan twice. I've been to Canada, which is another country. I've been to Cuba, and I've been to Mexico. That's it. I want to go to more countries. I would love to. Uh, 2 weeks ago, I went to U.S. territory. Went to Puerto Rico, and it was really amazing. It was really eye-opening. I didn't realize it was like so Americanized. They had a ton of fast food, and it was pretty poor outside of San Juan. In San Juan, where I stayed for part of the trip, had just like casinos everywhere because it's a failure whenever it's in use. Dirt, socialism, it improved a lot of things in a lot of really poor countries. I think capitalism is a failure in poor countries. Like, look at Africa, look at the Middle East, look at India. It's not doing great. Uh, okay, I'm gonna let this guest join, but please don't be like super crazy in here. But the 20th century should
No,
be proof
I
enough.
understand. I understand. Hey,
Hey,
let me show you
welcome.
my face. Hello.
When do I drink bleach? People are these comments. Hello,
Hello.
hey, hey.
Yeah, I'm not a troll. I know having these conversations online about social equity, what that can come with. Hence my name. It should tell everything. But I don't. Let me turn the camera off because I'm better at speaking that way.
No worries, yeah.
Um, Socialism is tolerance of capitalism. It is not anti-capitalism. It's the exploitation offloaded into another country so that you can live a better life of luxury. That's what socialism implemented is.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, just, I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. Do you mean like a
So it's the
specific example, maybe?
so it's the 50 it's what the formula what I like to call the 51-49%, where the choice is made, right? Even if it's good, it's only just a little bit more good than the bad. So if you look at we can both agree that there is no actual socialist country within the design framework and from the theory, right? The application of socialist countries, where are they offloading their exploitation?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a little tricky because a lot of people kind of have different definitions for socialism and communism, and some people even just use those terms interchangeably. So the way that I use those terms, communism is this ultimate goal of living communally, having everyone on the same page, and no longer you've advanced society beyond the point where you need a state, a government, money, classes, and everyone. You don't need the concept of private property anymore. It doesn't mean you don't own your house, you don't own your phone, or things like that. It means you don't own like a factory that other people work in. You don't own other people's houses and rent them out to them, or you don't own land and rent it out to people to work on. You can own your own land, you can own your own, factory, your machines or whatever, but that private ownership of industries is something we need to phase out, is my personal opinion. And so socialism is taking us from where we are, where we have private ownership of things that probably shouldn't be privately owned, like, medicine companies and a lot of things in healthcare, that industry, technology companies, social media. I don't know if that should be privately owned when everyone uses it and it can infringe on our free speech. Things like that. We're moving away from having everything be so privately owned with the ultimate goal of developing society enough where we can all be on the same page. And,
You're talking about, sorry, I don't mean to cut you up,
no
but
worries, no
like in
problem.
essence, you're talking about African or what was known pre-colonial, African or indigenous communalism.
That's a really good thing to bring up. It's interesting. Karl Marx, when he's theorizing about the progress through history, made a really good observation that he called it primitive communism. That a lot of
Hmm.
indigenous societies, African societies, places in the Middle East or in Asia, lived under a type of communism. They probably still had some hierarchies that today we would say that's really unfair, and they didn't have great like democracy and things weren't all so even, but they didn't have the concept of private property. One of my favorite quotes about the Aboriginal people in Australia was that when the colonizers came there, they were so confused. The Aboriginal people were like, how can you own land? It's like owning the
Right.
seasons or owning the sky. They just didn't have that concept.
So would you in essence view socialism as a transition into communism?
Yes, yeah. It's basically, I see that communal, everyone being on the same page, working together. That is how people are kind of made to be, and that's our human history. That's how we evolved, and look back. I think we can do a better version of that. We don't need to be exploiting each other, working for each other. We can be working with each other.
So that's the crux of where I think the most theoretical explanation of how socialism is supposed to be implemented. I
Yeah.
take the different approach of like, all right, because I know there's a process in which like you read the theory and then you apply the theory, and when you're out there applying it, you're like, oh, the book didn't account for this. I'm going to have to adjust for wind speed, angles, all of that, right? And
This has
so
been the big problem of how do you get there? Yeah.
right, right. So it's my belief that, and I'm not saying we can make any shortcuts. I don't want my words because number one, I believe that the English language is the worst way to communicate things. They're like the I try to articulate this thing, and I'm like, well, what freedom, the difference
Just
between
try your
freedom and
best.
liberty,
You're doing a good
right?
job.
But I feel like even in the best theoretical example of socialism being implemented, it like the transition point would keep us stuck in the transition because it would just offload that exploitation elsewhere. Now, I don't even know if there's a pathway that isn't through socialism. That's just me using my analytical brain to be like, all right, well, where are the plot holes? Like, because
You're
historically,
absolutely
that's what it
right.
is.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that even in that transition, you're going to have contradictions, right? You can't just, flip a switch and your whole economy, all the things that you need are going to be reformed
Right.
in the ideal way. You have to work with the bad system you currently have, and you're going to be exploiting people, and you're going to be making these difficult decisions. One really cool story about this that I think a lot of people don't know about is in Cuba, when they were like, okay, we're really about this, we're going to do socialism now, and the US is, putting this embargo on us, and it's going to be really rough for a while, they got together as a country and just harvested a ton of sugar. I don't know how sugar is measured, but their goal was like 400 million tons of sugar, something incredible like that over 2 years of harvest, because
Hmm.
that's what their island was set up to do. That was their system in place. Was they were a sugar colony. They
Right. No,
brought
I got that.
slavery there, and they had these plantations that were just evil and exploitative and brutal, but that's what they had to work with. So everybody, teachers, lawyers, ballerinas, all of these Cubans got together and volunteered to be harvesting sugar for like 2 years straight. And they unfortunately had some like bad weather conditions and fell a little bit short of their goal. Also because sugar prices kind of dropped that year,
Right.
and so they were not able to like hit their goal of what they calculated that they would need to fund their socialist project. But it's like a really powerful point in human
That
history, I think.
spirit was still there, right? It was like,
Yeah.
re- I, I keep running into this. I'm 41. Like, I like to call myself an elder of Red Action, aka the Black Bloc. When I was young, I was out there doing all of the like the stuff that I guess people hear about
Yeah.
doing in protests and stuff. Um, but I keep running into this crux where I have to explain to the younger comrades that, like, hey, there's this thing where you're going to be met with several choices, and like, it's the 51-49% rule. Like, the choice is going to be just a little bit better than the bad one, and I know it's going to be like hard to make, but like that every single person, and I mean this, every single person who has changed society in this more equitable way, in their time, they were hated for it.
Absolutely. I have another guest request. I'm gonna let this guy in. Hey,
Oh, hey guys, how are y'all doing?
great.
Hello.
How do you feel about socialism?
I do not want it all in this country. After looking at Cuba, and you were just talking about Cuba,
Yeah.
do you know about Cuba's economy and how bad it is over there right now? I mean, what you saw on Fast and Furious is nothing like what it is.
I went
You can
to
go over
Havana
there and you'll
recently.
spend 2 hours with 150 cars in front of you waiting for gas.
Yeah, I went
You
to
go in the grocery
Havana.
store and the
I went to
same
Cuba.
thing of each vendor's on the aisle. They pick and choose what they want to go in the grocery store. Like, it's not a good thing.
So what Cuba's experiencing is extreme poverty because they've been under a 60-year failed US embargo with that was the
Okay,
goal of
so when
this
you walk in a
embargo.
grocery store,
Okay.
and certain products are put in there, and there's no variation. It's like going in there and you see Ritz crackers. You don't have any other crackers. It's just Ritz crackers. The government,
Yeah, I understand
because they're
that. I've
poor,
I've been to
they pick and
Cuba.
choose who to go in the stores.
I've been to Cuba, and so they're not allowed to trade with a lot of countries because the U.S. will, like, the threat is that they will attack the ships that will come in with trade. So they can't really export as much. They can't do, and even this applies to things like intellectual property and medications that are patented. If it's a U.S. company, our government, big pharma, all this kind of stuff, they are not allowed to do business with Cuba. And that has unbelievable ramifications that's hurting their economy. And I mean, think about it. If the US couldn't trade anymore, what would our grocery stores look like? We don't grow that
Well,
much
we have
here.
Coke and Pepsi. If you go over there, you just got Coke. You don't have competition. The government killed competition and hired their buddies who own the companies to put whatever they want in there. There's no competition. It's killed. The government puts who they want in the spot, make the money, get paid off by the people,
So
back to
what
the government.
you're
It's terrible.
describing as capitalism, though, because in socialism, no one owns the company. That's what happens in the U.S. Facebook does that right now with trying to ban TikTok. They put their buddies in office. They get paid. They pay all these lobbyists to go try to ban TikTok because Facebook doesn't want competition. And when they get competition, they just buy it, like Instagram, like WhatsApp. and like next door, pretty much all these little social media companies, Facebook just buys them. So what you're talking about is monopoly capitalism. In socialism,
No,
you
I'm
try to
not. What I'm talking about is what the government chooses to happen happens, and you're not getting the point.
our government chooses to
Capitalism,
have things happen.
capitalism is not a monopoly. You have several corporations at the top, and I don't believe in like fierce capitalism, but I do believe in capitalism
Okay.
because you can start at the bottom and you can go as far as you want to the top. People say there's limits, but there's not. I mean, look at Ben Carson. He was born to a
Are you
broke
sure you
ass
want to look at?
family, and became a like what kind of engineer? Like works on rockets, and he's a doctor. I'm just saying, you can go anywhere you want in this country.
I mean, I think it was tragic that, Ben Carson had to grow up in poverty in one of the richest countries in the history of the world. I
He
mean,
didn't
doesn't
grow up
that
in
show?
poverty. I'm saying that
Wait,
he
did you
was
say that
born
he
in
did?
poverty and he
Yeah,
became a presidential nominee.
that's what
He
I'm
came from
saying.
not shit to the top.
He probably should have not been born into poverty if there's so much wealth in this country.
He couldn't control his parents' choices.
That's fair, yeah. But anyway, I've been to Cuba, and I think judging an economy by it doesn't quite make sense what you're saying. I think maybe you should go to Cuba. You could get a better sense for it. It's a
No,
really
I watched a
beautiful place.
documentary that broke it down and how socialism was crumbling that nation. It was like a 2 hour
So if
documentary.
socialism's crumbling the nation, why do we have an embargo on them? And the goal of our embargo, you can go to our government website and see it says we want to starve the Cuban people economically with their resources and everything so that they will overthrow their own government. If socialism wasn't working, why would we need an embargo on them? Wouldn't socialism just not work and then they would overthrow their government?
Can I just jump in real quick and say, like, watching a documentary on something is the same as looking at a picture of it. Like, I could go to the Grand Canyon and get much more depth and understanding from going to the than a picture could ever show me. You get what I'm saying?
I guess that's like saying I can go to one website over another and fact check it, and you might believe one
Yeah.
thing and the other one's not right. But how do you know it's
No,
true?
I'm
They don't
saying
need a
physically
website.
go to the place to get
I
a better
get it,
understanding
but
of it,
I
as
mean,
opposed
this
to.
wasn't like, oh my god.
I'm
I
saying
think
physically go to the place to get a better understanding of it, as opposed to watching a documentary that could be cut up and edited any way they want to deliver it to you.
yeah, I'll tell you, I hear
Kind
what
of
you're
like the
saying.
news can cut up and deliver whatever they want. I mean, I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
golly, people are just so blind to everything.
I mean, I study it. I mean, have you read any Cuban history books? I've been to Cuba. I've read Cuban history books. I've talked to Cuban Americans. I've talked to Cubans from Cuba. I've talked to students at the University of Havana. I've talked to random people I met at the bar in
All
Havana, and a
right,
lot of them
okay,
didn't
get
support
past Cuba.
socialism.
Let's get past Cuba.
You
Why do
know?
you like socialism? Point out what you like. What's the platform you stand on for it?
Right. So I think everyone agrees that our government's really corrupt. And how do you get, like, what causes corruption? Someone pays our politicians to do favors for them in our government, right? So that their businesses they own will have an unfair advantage in the economy. That's what corruption is. If you are able to make to change our economy so it's not reliant on like private ownership of businesses, then there will just be less corruption. It just won't be as profitable to be corrupt, or no one will own the business that, these pharmaceutical companies, for example, how many ads are they running in on the news you see when you watch the news, and how many lobbyists do they fund, and how many Congress people do they give money for their races, Republicans and Democrats? Why do we need to be making pharmaceuticals for profit? We should just pay whatever it costs to produce them, whatever it costs to research them, do the things that make sense, consult with scientists and experts, I think. And sometimes, because it's for profit, a lot of drugs that are not as profitable to produce get put on the back burner. And we could be saving more lives and helping more people, but it's just not profitable all the time. So,
So you
it's
think
an
the government should
example.
run all that? or do you want the government completely out of the way?
I think the government could run it. Yeah, totally. A lot of different countries have public ownership of pharmaceutical industries, or healthcare is public. And I just invited someone else into the live, but yeah, public, not for profit. The other thing is, I think it makes the most sense to have like a mixed economy and transition away from the current system that we currently have. So some private, some public in competition with them. Because the thing that happens right now is that we just give money to these companies that are owned by people who already have billions of dollars. So, for example, when we need a COVID vaccine, we invested so much of our tax money in Pfizer, in Moderna, all these companies ahead of time. But we're not really operating in that mentality of run the country like a company. We're just shoveling money into these companies. If we were running the country like a company, we would own part of Pfizer, we would own part of Moderna, and then all these profits would get kicked back to us partially. So
that would never happen with a government in place.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I think we should have
if there was
shares
a
in
government
Pfizer.
place running it, you would not own shit. They would still control it, and they would make you think that you own it, but they wouldn't give you shit. They'd take away freedoms while making you think you were still in the Garden of Eden.
I think a capitalist government operates like that, yeah. But if you can try to get the money out of politics by doing things like taking private ownership out of businesses more and more. You see what I mean? I don't trust our government.
But as long as there's a government and there's a business underneath the government, it doesn't matter if it's capitalism or socialism. The government's still going to win no matter what. They're still going to keep getting paid. They're still going to be lobbyists. Still going to be super PACs. Money's still going to come rolling in.
Totally. Yeah, I actually do agree with you there. And that's why I think the ultimate goal has to be to get rid of the need for a government. Because if we just like snap our fingers and deleted our government, someone would step in, right? Like Bill Gates, George Soros,
all of them
Jeff
can take
Bezos.
A shit
They'll
and
step
leave.
in. They'll hire a standing army and say, "Hey, I'm in charge now. I have too much at risk here. We need to have a new government to protect all my property." So I think we have to be smart about it.
It would literally be all of them. All of them would jump in and be like, "Listen, let's combine our, let's Captain Planet, but the evil edition."
Like, look at Mexico. When their government took a backseat, the cartels were able to rise to power. The cartels are just like pure business, all about the bottom line. Anything goes. They're not regulated at all by anyone, only each other, kind of. So I think we could slip into cartel world if we just delete our government today. And we have to work toward no longer needing it. If that makes sense.
So there's a thing that that percentage I keep mentioning, the 49, 51%.
Yeah, I've heard you say that.
It's a formula that it's I want to say it's perfected by like the CIA and its implements when they coup other countries.
Yeah.
Right. But even more, I need to stress this. This is going to sound low. Even more, I think the way the government can exist is by allowing certain systems like that to continue to exist on that formula, where it's just a little bit better than a bad choice. So people are going to deal with it, right? That's where he's coming from the framework of capitalism is good for everyone. Anybody can rise from the bottom. And sir, no disrespect. Wait. Let me finish. No disrespect. But using Ben Carson as your example is not really good. He's a neuroscientist, by the way, a neurologist.
Yeah, that was born in poverty.
So that's what you're saying. But wait. He is one black person that made it to the top out of 40 million that the government says exist in this country. And you can round up all the rich black people, and guess what they wouldn't equal? Not even 0.1%. So please, when you say anybody can rise to the bottom, from the bottom to the top, I need you to understand that capitalism doesn't operate like that. Like it puts those who already have the resources up front. So Bezos' kids are going to have a better chance than any of us in this life
And I
right
just
now.
want to point
And
out,
they haven't even worked a day yet.
That's a good point.
So
I
that's what I'm
know, and
trying
I
to get
just
you to
want to point
understand.
out that America is fat, ignorant, and lazy. Willpower and determination will get you anywhere.
Oh,
I
these
mean,
are actually fair points. I agree with
I
all
mean, if
that.
you
Yeah.
want to be lazy and sit on your ass and just get welfare from the government, then that's fine. I don't care. But if you want to have willpower, determination, wake up at 4 in the morning, work 12 hours, then go home, eat dinner, and then spend your next 3 hours on a computer building a business like I did, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
and then I can die
Amen.
at
Okay.
40,
Yeah.
Do what?
right? I could die at 40.
No, you
But
can
I
retire at
get where you're
40 and live the
coming
rest of your
from.
life however you want.
Wait, sorry, I get where you're coming from. I'm just saying we live in a nation of individuals, and each experience isn't the person just being fat and lazy and not getting off their booty and not working.
I let
I
someone
like
else join the live. I want to see what he thinks about, or he or
sorry,
she
let
or
me just
they think
finish this
about
point.
socialism.
Let me just finish this last
Oh,
point
sure.
for this. There is some merit to what you're saying, right? But I
Yeah, because
think
people want to go home and
wait.
watch
Let me finish.
TV, go to bed, and go back and do it at the
Let me
same
just
thing
finish.
tomorrow.
Let me just finish this point. There's some merit to what you're saying. But I'm sorry, Paris Hilton is going to own a kingdom, sir. And I don't know if she's waking up at 4 in the morning and breaking her butt to work. So
I
please,
don't.
like,
I
just
just don't
understand where
get
I'm
this
coming
Oh, hey,
from.
argument
hey,
though.
hey. So do you
I
think
don't get
200
this.
years ago in her
This
family
is
changed
not a good
somebody didn't start the
argument.
process?
This is not a good
You think
argument
she's
though,
been rich since
like
the
at
beginning of
all.
time? Her family heritage has been rich. Like she just comes from
I
a
don't.
king,
I don't
aristocracy.
think we should research the Hilton family fortune. There's probably you can trace it back to like
I'm just
slavery or
saying people
colonization or
have
something
a better
horrible.
benefit because somebody in their family, I don't care if it's one generation ago, 2 generations ago, 3 generations
Yeah.
ago, somebody gave a fucking did what I just told you how to do it. You got to break your back.
I feel you. Hard
Yeah, but
work
I'm just not
is really
understanding. Just
important. Well, I
because
want to hear
one
what this
person,
this new guy who just joined has to say about socialism, the right corner.
yeah, I've been listening for maybe the last 25 minutes or so. I've had quite a few points of contention, but I mean, I'm just gonna spin off what you guys were saying now, so as to not go back 20 minutes and back in the conversation. Um, but just because one person has it easier than someone else doesn't mean that the system you're living in is bad. That's like such a easily debunkable argument.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, inequality is something you gotta work on when it's bad, and when it's not so bad, hopefully you can focus on other things. But I think it's historically the pretty much like the worst it's ever been in this country. So
I know, but people just
it's
want to
not
sit at
great.
home and collect a stimulus check. Oh, government, send
Yeah.
me a stimulus check. Let's get it in the economy.
So here's a question. How do you stimulate the economy? Like, how do you make it worth people's while to really go out and risk it to start a new business? Because most people, like, kind of can't afford to start a business. They can't get a loan. And there's statistics that are really terrifying for potential business owners.
It's not easy,
Like,
but what? But
one
what?
out
I
of
don't.
10, or what is it? Only like 2 or 3 out of 10 small businesses last past their first
Yeah,
year.
but look how many people are
It's just
clinically obese in this
bad.
country. We're. My
That's
point
also a
by
capitalism problem, isn't it?
Well,
no, it's
bro,
not a
Like,
obviously
no,
I'm a
no.
different.
It's
No,
a.
no, obviously I'm a different breed. I started a laser engraving business, and I did get a laser
Was I
engraver,
not
and I
just
did get a
talking?
loan. But
Like, what?
it took me leveraging a lot of stuff to get this loan to get this laser
Okay.
engraver. But by willpower,
congratulations. I want to hear a little bit more from our new guy though. I really
okay,
am I'm happy
yeah,
for
go
you and
for
your
it.
business
I'm
though.
sorry, I wasn't cutting people off. I'm sorry, I'm not that person.
It's okay.
I don't mind him. I don't mind because it's like I think that the host and the guy on the in the bottom box are more so on the same page, and the guy below me and I are on the same page. But we're not going to get any ideas across if we're just going to like jump over each other.
Yeah,
But
but I'm
anyway,
sorry, right? I'm sorry, right corner.
no, it's all good. I mean, I'm pretty sure you and I agree on a lot. So,
I bet you we could
just
drink a beer together.
but what I was gonna say is like, yeah, you have a lot of people in this country that are going to have it harder to start a business, but that doesn't make it impossible. A, B, we're also living at a time that we have the highest obesity rate we've ever had. So, I mean, causation, correlation, a lot of people are just lazy and don't want to take personal accountability. I don't know what else to tell you.
We also have higher sugar consumption than like at any point in time, and eat more processed foods
And
than
whose
at any
choice
point
is
in
that? Those
time.
people putting the food in their mouth.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And
No, wait a minute.
how do
I'm
we like
sorry.
counter that? Do we just like wag our finger at them and be like, "Hey, stop being fat and lazy," or do we
Yeah,
start
exactly. That's
I
introducing
exactly
mean,
what you do.
nutrition?
hey,
I don't
throw
think
the
it's gonna
TV
That's
at
work.
your
exactly what you
house.
do.
Television is the killer of America.
I just don't
Can
think
I
it's gonna
just can I just
work.
jump
We
in?
need better nutrition education. We need better like food products. We can't like we need to regulate these companies or advertise or educate the public. Sure, what would
Yeah, there's
you
truth
Can
in
I
what you're
just say
saying,
this?
but
I don't. I want to
yeah.
say this. I
Hmm.
hate. Excuse me. I don't want to use the word hate, but I think it's like it is very problematic to make assumptions based on like specific data without any framework for why it is that way. Like to say Americans are fatter and lazier and not research things like food deserts or or
No,
access
food deserts are an
so
excuse to
let me finish.
people.
Let me finish. Our
Mhm.
access to fresh fruits and veggies on a daily basis is it's like limited. It's limiting the scope of your argument so that you can ignore those things and just say, well, people are fat and lazy.
Yeah, it's called
And I don't know where y'all
moralizing.
right.
It's
I don't know where
moralizing
y'all live,
people.
but in my community, I don't see a lot of like fat and lazy people. And I live in one of the poorest communities in Philly. But like I don't
But
see
wait,
people just sitting around waiting for a welfare check.
if you're talking about food deserts, right? Wouldn't you say that there's a lot of countries in Africa that have food deserts, yet they're nowhere close to the obesity rate the United States has.
That's
No
all
other
because they're
countries
more
even.
malnourished.
Yeah,
They're
Yeah,
still
I'm not
malnourished.
exactly sure about what you're talking.
No.
I think we should
Now what
not
I'm
speak
saying
on that
is
if we
there's a
haven't
lot.
been to
No, but I'm
different
saying
places in Africa.
there's other countries that are lesser developed. There's countries
Okay.
within Africa that are lesser developed. There's countries within Africa that are more developed. There's countries in South America that are lesser developed and more.
Hey,
But
I
what I'm
bet.
saying is there's other countries that have food deserts, but yet they're nowhere near the obesity rate we have.
Yeah, do a statistic between us and Africa and see if they have more TVs than us.
I mean, look at their unemployment rates. If they're more unemployed, then doesn't that mean they're lazier, but they're also less obese? So I don't think,
Right.
I just don't think it's, I understand what you're saying, and I do agree that a lot of people are maybe like depressed or they don't care about their life or they don't feel like they have real things to be able to contribute to the world. And so they do just kind of sit around and I think it's depression. I don't think it's just like lazy. I think they're just kind of
So you know
sad.
what Huey P.
Depression.
Newton
But
says about
why?
What
that?
is a
Yeah.
food desert? I want to
Wait a
know what
second.
that
Wait a
is.
second. How are you gonna
You
pin
know
this to depression? Like the United States is the wealthiest, most opportunistic country in the world, yet more people are depressed here than other countries. How do we have
yeah.
more depressed people here than there are in Africa or
I
in
didn't say
China
that. I was
or
just
in
saying like a lot of
India or
the
throughout
people you're
Europe?
talking about who are sitting around all day, even though they have everything at their fingertips. I mean, you can
So
go to this person and say, "Hey, get it together," but they're not going to get it together. I think you should actually try to do
so
something smarter than that.
the emancipatory science perspective of that says that that is a person overwhelmed by social conditions. We, as human beings, as individuals, can't particularly analyze what those social conditions are until we know that person individually. So I don't typically ascribe fat and lazy to someone without knowing their particular experience, their conditions, their needs, their resources, their, the things available to them. It's like, it's just painting a straw man and basing your entire view on that. And the
That's
problem
true, but
is,
just look over the
Mm,
last decade, the
what just
obesity figures. Look
happened?
from 1990 to the current day. Have those obesity figures gone down or stayed level or gone up? They've gone up dramatically in 20 years.
What just
and I
happened
would
to
have
my?
to
Oh,
know each person. I would have to know each person individual and their social conditions that led to that to make the assumption that they were all fat and lazy. Is my point.
yeah.
Those
Let's change the
numbers don't
subject. This
double.
is. I don't want to like talk about fat and lazy people.
Yeah,
There's
like
more
that's
exciting
just
stuff.
ableist to begin with, and I don't want to
Yeah.
like keep down that path. But it's like I, I'm sorry, gentlemen, and I mean this with great respect. If we're going to have these conversations, we have to have them from the viewpoint of not generalizing from a point
Yeah.
of contention of this is the problem because people are blah blah blah. Because you don't know 8 billion people. You don't even know 330 million in this country.
Right.
No, but I can look at statistics, and I can
Those
compare them to
statistics
our country.
dehumanize
I
people.
mean, what statistic is going out
No,
and
they
like they're
speak
polling
truth
people
to.
and asking,
There's,
are you fat
there's.
and lazy? Like that's just a
Now I'm saying
weird.
statistics put
I
people in a
don't know.
number and dehumanizes the
Yeah.
individual within them. That's what I'm saying. Like if you're going to use statistics to talk about demographics,
Yeah,
you
Caboose, do
erase
you want
the
to come up?
individual within that.
Sorry, I haven't
Sorry.
been looking at the
But
guests.
people on
I'm
the
gonna
left and right
ask.
pull
Doesn't the left
statistics
always use
off the internet
statistics?
every day and
Wait.
fight about it.
Hey, what do you want to talk
Hello.
about, Caboose?
Hey, hey,
We
this is
can
Caboose.
change the
Hey, I just
subject
wanted to
now.
address the two people below me. They said that a lot of countries in Africa, as a counterpoint, without any statistics or evidence, just as like, oh, it's probably worse over in Africa. And then one of them said that there's countries in South Africa that have it worse. I was just wondering if they could name the evidence or stats of what parts of Africa are worse, or if they could name 5 African countries for me real
I don't want to
quick.
put anyone on blast like that. We know they're just kind of talking about
Yeah, it's based in
generalizations and
racism. Yeah, we
yeah,
understand.
it's
I didn't say it, and when
also
I
yeah, you
said
didn't
it's
It's
say
not
it.
not based
racist,
in
I just
racism.
said
The
I
guy
bet
said
you
the
there's
United
less
States has
TVs in
no. The
Africa.
guy said the United States has. The guy said the United States has food deserts. So I asked, do you not think there's food deserts in Africa?
Name 5 African countries for me. No,
Oh,
I'm not gonna put you on the
don't be
spot.
mean to
I'm sorry.
him.
No,
Not
I'm just
everyone
gonna
has
it's
to
not
say
know
being
that the
mean.
reason
No,
they
it's not being
quoted
mean.
Africa is racism.
Yeah.
It's not racist. The
That's
guy
the reason you
said that there's
selected
food deserts
Africa
in the
out.
United States. No, it's not. That's
There
not
are.
racist. The guy said there's food deserts in the
No, I'm
United
saying that
States, and
you
that's
There
the
were
reason
speaking.
there
that's
can be
that, and
food
that's the reason
deserts in
that
You
people
are
Africa. There
avoid.
can
No,
be
projecting.
host,
food
host,
See,
deserts
host,
in the United
host,
let's
host.
not
States.
Hold on a
devolve
second.
into
No, no,
that.
no. He's gonna derail the conversation because he's a dork. So the guy said he's trying to push this idea that I'm a racist. So what the
I
guy
mean, you are.
said below
No,
on the
no,
bottom
no.
box is that there's food deserts in the United States, and that's the reason. That's a main contributor to why we have such an obese population. I said, so are there not food deserts in countries in Africa? How is that racist?
So I'm just gonna like clarify because I think I understand what both of you are getting at real quick. A food desert in the United States, like I've seen them out in like far out in like Queens or in Brooklyn. I live in New York City in these certain neighborhoods where there just aren't grocery stores and there might be like a little corner store or like in other parts
Right.
of the US there might be a gas station and people go
Hmm.
there for their groceries and they end up buying like candy and chips and just the worst nutritional things because you don't always want to go 45 minutes out to a real grocery store. So that's what a food desert is in the
Or
US.
you can't
In an
because
underdeveloped
they're
country, yeah,
mobile.
or you don't have mobility or you don't have a car or whatever. In an underdeveloped country, like maybe this hypothetical one, we're making big generalizations about Africa. I'm just speaking to your point, trying to say what you
Hmm.
might be thinking. I think it's a different situation. They don't even have like a gas station or a corner store. We're talking about, limited access to food in an underdeveloped country. It's going to be different. So I
Yeah,
think you
and can
you
I just add
probably
one more
both
thing?
agree, actually. Yeah, sure.
Can I just
Let's
add one
go.
more thing? The food desert was only one thing I mentioned. I mentioned several
Yeah.
other things, but it's just like you took that point of contention and you went right to Africa. So I understand where Caboose was coming from, but I don't want it to devolve in that. Like, because I don't think he's a racist. I think he
Yeah.
might have some like thoughts like about nationalism that don't fit with my point of view. But like, I'm open to having that conversation without it devolving into something, you know, unproductive.
No, it's just a white liberal with a white savior complex is all it is. He's trying to come in and try to point blame that I'm somehow a racist for pointing out a simple statistic. But that's okay. That's cute. That's what you're used to doing.
I mean,
This is
you
not a
are, but we can move
statistic, though.
on.
I
It's
don't know. I didn't hear a
yeah.
statistic. It's just a generalization, and you're using that as an
No, it's not. I
example.
could
Like,
have picked
oh,
India.
starving kids in Africa.
I could very easily pick India. They have a far lower obesity rate than the United States. Would you not say India has a lot of food deserts within the country?
You could pick
India
Detroit or
has a
something.
lower death by starvation rate compared to the U.S.
We're
The
talking
U.S.
about
has more
obesity
deaths
rate.
by
That's a nice
starvation.
pivot. That's cute. I'm not going to let you
We're
do
talking
that.
about
We're talking about
obesity, not
obesity rate.
not dying from
No,
Wait,
Why are we
wait,
obesity.
talking
wait,
about
wait.
Pick up this
obesity?
other
This is.
statistic that has
Please,
nothing to
gentlemen,
do with what
please,
we were saying, though. No, we're talking
please,
about obesity
gentlemen,
rate.
I'm gonna change
gentlemen.
the subject, actually.
Thank you,
Uh,
thank
I'm
you.
gonna tell you guys a story. So a lot of people say we're talking about food, right? A lot of people say that socialism causes starvation, and there have been historical food shortages, famines that have happened in socialist countries. It's true. But there's one country that they had none of that kind of problem at all, and they probably should have after what they went through. This is Vietnam, where before their socialist revolution, they had a horrific famine that killed 2 million people under French colonial rule in Vietnam. This is under joint French and Japanese colonial rule. They were making enough food for everybody there, but because these capitalist colonial countries were at war, it was too profitable and they didn't care about their colony and the people of it. They shipped all of their rice out of Vietnam, causing this like 2 million people in that small country is a huge chunk of their population. So after their war with France, after their war with Japan, World War II, then they had a war with France to get their independence, and then the U.S. came in and said, "Hey, are you guys thinking of redistributing that land that was put in place by French colonial rule? Don't do that. That's communism." So they were like, of course we're going to redistribute the land the French people came here and stole, and we're going to give it to the people who are working on it and actually, making the rice. And in their heads, this is a life or death situation because they knew people, everyone probably had family or knew somebody who died in this famine, who died in the war with France. So they're thinking, we need to do this. And the U.S. is coming in and wants to buy up our land in a neo-colonial way, just with like a wink and a nod and not be like overtly colonial. So they fought to the death. They fought an incredible war against the U.S., which is the biggest superpower in the world, and successfully defended from the U.S. It was an agrarian state, a bunch of socialist farmers. And after that point, their socialist economy, they did not have food shortages. They didn't have a famine. No one, like, this was not a
You talk about
problem there.
Vietnam?
So I love to bring that up when we're talking about socialism versus capitalism
Are
and
you talking
these
about Vietnam?
generalizations. Vietnam, that's the country that went through
Wait a
all
minute.
of this.
Which because I was just talking about one of the most brilliant strategists of all time, and it was the military strategist of the Vietnam War.
Ho Chi Minh.
No, no,
Literally my favorite
his
revolutionary.
general. I'm not even gonna say
Oh,
his
one of
name. I'm
his
gonna make y'all
general.
look it up.
Okay. Okay, I'll look into it more. But yeah,
Yeah.
they said something like
Uh,
the most important weapon or most important thing in the war is a shovel, not a gun, because they were digging tunnels to evade,
mhm.
U.S. aircrafts, and they couldn't see where they were in the jungles and everything. They were just like 2 steps ahead of the U.S. at every point. The U.S. couldn't buy weapons good enough to
Let me put
outplay
it this
them.
way: fight off 5 superpowers and take down your own brutal dictator at the same time.
Yeah. Hey, I just added someone else to the chat named Jazz Zero.
That's
Hey,
me. Hi.
how do you feel about socialism?
I'm a big proponent of socialism. I've seen the damage that capitalism can do personally, to a thriving middle class family.
Guarantee you she lives in the United States, though.
I do, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like I should have to flee my home because I want it to be better.
Yeah.
Like, is that not real? Like, that's not realistic.
So
I
did
would love
you
to live somewhere in a country that treats their citizens how they should be treated, but like, I also don't want to leave my home. I don't want to leave my family. Just because I want it to be better doesn't mean that I should leave. That's a terrible argument.
and you lived
Hey,
through the
So
economic
what's a
crisis, right?
successful
Is that what you're
socialist
talking
country?
about?
Yeah, I lived through 2008, and also we're in an economic crisis right now. 2 years ago, I was saving to buy a house. Now I'm still in an apartment because there's no way that I can buy a house right now with everything that's happening. So,
Work harder.
two times I've lived through this as a kid and now as an adult. So, I mean, my family became homeless because of the crash in 2008. Like,
Oh my
I've
God.
seen what capitalism can do and how it just basically destroys and can take everything from from people who have worked hard their whole life.
Did you see what socialism did to Cubans?
Do you know that Cuba has the most doctors per capita? And do you know
Thank
why
you.
have you ever heard of sanctions? Do you know what the
Yeah,
US
it's
does to Cuba? Do you know
if
why
the
they
US
cannot
couldn't trade,
thrive?
yeah.
and
Hello.
hey,
Oh,
dear,
no, she
2008 was
said
the
that
world
Cubans.
economy, not
She
just
said
the United States.
she
It was
said Cuba has
globally.
the most doctors per capita. So why are
Okay.
people not flying to Cuba for their surgeries? Yet people in
They
Cuba would
Wait,
beg to
you
go
Sanctions.
to
don't
the
Do you
United
realize?
States
know?
to
People
visit.
Do
are.
you know
Oh,
the
okay,
rules? Do
okay.
you know how hard it is for U.S. citizens to go to Cuba? And not
Yeah,
because of
you
Cuba,
can't.
because of the U.S. government. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very
I'm sure
difficult.
there's a lot of very wealthy people that are
Wait,
just begging to go to Cuba for a
the
medical
right
treatment.
corner. Wait, you don't realize if you're wealthy in the US, you don't need to go somewhere else for surgery. But
Exactly.
in the Caribbean, people go to Cuba for healthcare things all the time. This is like a really well-known thing. Like if you go on, I follow some different like Caribbean countries' social media on Instagram, and I've seen like memes about going to Cuba for doctors. You'll get like a panel of doctors of different specializations when you have a problem. So they'll be like checking what things from different angles that you might not think of. They have so many doctors because all they can do is invest in education. They can't, import a lot of things for different industries. So
Yep. Yep.
So then, why do you think there's Cubans in the millions fleeing that country trying to get over to the United
it's
States?
not
Because of
Cubans in
U.S.
the millions
sanctions.
fleeing. Yeah, it's a
Wait, wait,
really
wait, no, but
sad
wait, the U.S.
situation.
sanctions argument, right? And it's the embargo that's your argument. When the United States placed an embargo on Cuba, the Cubans were allied with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was another socialist regime. Why couldn't they support them? The
They
United States is only
wait,
one
they were
country.
supporting them. That's why the 90s were so bad in Cuba because their biggest trading partner was
The
collapsed
Soviet
from
Union,
the
another
US
socialist. Oh, you mean a socialist regime that collapsed? I wonder why that is.
because of the Cold War. It was
Because
like
of
a 60-year effort.
The
because of all
United
the
But
States
y'all
wasn't
just
a
sanctions,
look
wait, wait,
look
wait,
up
wait.
sanctions,
But the
the
former
United
early
former
States,
waging war
socialist
the
on the
United
countries
States
socialist
was in
versus
a
current
wait a
countries.
socialist
second. But the
countries,
United
man.
States was in
Get
a
us
Cold
right.
War. The United States was in a Cold War with the Soviet Union. So why didn't the U.S. collapse, but the Soviet Union did?
Because they
Oh,
they
maybe
pushed
because their
and they
system didn't
won. They were
work as well.
richer.
Why
I
can't you
don't
just
know.
admit that the system just doesn't work? It's never worked.
Okay,
Because
so if we want to talk about like
Look how the
Soviet
socialist
versus
countries handled Chernobyl.
U.S.
Wow.
economics. So one interest, some things about like, does it work or not work? Socialism is an economic system, right? And so we can look at where something was when socialism was implemented and where it
Mhm.
ended up. So if you look at where Russia was when they had their revolution, it was a feudal backwater. Everyone was like an abused peasant. They were all pissed off because their kings were sending them to, fight in World War I, and they were like, "What the hell is this? Like, we're all dying for these rich people," and they were all illiterate. Just this is not an ideal place to start a country from. They have their revolution in which, in this war, the US sent troops, the UK sent troops, like the whole West was fighting against the Bolsheviks in this revolution. It was totally stacked against them. They have their revolution, and immediately after, like within a decade or two, this World War II, which killed 27 million citizens of the USSR and destroyed 2/3 of their production capacity. 2/3 of their ability to have an economy was destroyed. Even then, just a few decades later, they're in outer fucking space. They're the first country to go to outer space. This place, like within 3 or 4 generations of being illiterate farming peasants, were in outer space. The first
Because
woman
the
in
only
space.
thing that the Soviet
It's
government cared
incredible.
about was the Soviet government's success. They didn't care about the people's success. It wasn't a government for the people, it was a government for the government. Simply no other way to put it. They were hyper
Okay, so you're
selfish.
talking about government, but I was talking about economic. So,
Yeah, but the economic system in the
Which is
Soviet
what
Union collapsed.
socialism is. It's an
yeah.
And
economic
the Soviet
system.
and socialism practiced in the Soviet Union collapsed. Practiced in
We
Venezuela
practice
collapsed.
socialism in the
You're not
US
Practicing
really
in
too, by the
Cuba
responding
way.
to what I'm saying, the
I am
right
responding to
corner.
what you're saying. You're talking
No,
about
you're
how the
not.
no, yes, I am.
No.
I
No,
directly
you're
responded
not.
to the claim that you said that the USSR went to space. They went to space because the USSR's government only cared about accomplishments made by the USSR government, yet their people were suffering under their reign. It wasn't a country for the
I
people. It
mean,
was a
people
country
were
for the
suffering in the US as well. These aren't logical
there's
arguments.
people.
This was
But
the Jim
look
Crow
up
Oh
South.
socialism.
God.
Socialism is based on government planning. Capitalism is based on the individual. There's a
No.
difference.
But
Okay.
yet again, in the Cold War, who survived the Cold War? The United States or the Soviet Union?
I mean,
Which system collapsed?
Who didn't win the Korean War? Who lost the Vietnam War? Who lost the Iraq
The
War? Who
United
lost
States
the
has some.
Afghan War?
Yeah, the United States has some L's, but that doesn't mean that
Literally.
we don't have more W's than we have L's.
Winning
Okay, we have
wars
more
isn't,
L's than we have W's. That's just a fact,
dude,
But y'all
bro.
are screaming that socialism is for the economy. It's not. It's for the government to run the
it's an
economy and take
But
away
economic.
if
your
you
your
Yeah,
think
private rights.
if you think
it's
we
an
have more
economic
L's than we
model.
have W's, and you have visited Cuba, like you said, and you've read all these books about Cuba, and you think their system is so superior, why aren't you living in Cuba yet you
What
can
did I
It's
say
literally?
earlier?
I'm
That
not
is
illegal.
a
talking about I'm not
terrible
talking
It's
Jazz.
argument.
literally
Jazz. No,
illegal.
Terrible
Jazz. I
argument.
don't know if you know this, Jazz. The
Terrible
world doesn't
argument.
revolve around you. I wasn't
Oh my
speaking to
God, you know
you. I was
what's so
speaking to the host.
crazy? This
I was
is
Jazz,
speaking
why
to
I
the
we
think
have
I'm
a
host.
gonna mute him a
podcast.
little.
Take mics away from men
Can I read
2023.
something?
Yeah.
Can I
No,
just read
the
something?
right corner. I'm just gonna give you a little break.
Hey, no, hey, don't mute him. Your views are going up. You're getting more people in
Just
your
for
live.
just for a little bit,
So,
y'all.
Dude, no, his
so the
argument is so.
socialism
Sorry.
definition says a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates for the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
so but
here's
So
what
what
I'm
was
real
the
quick,
reading.
definition
I
though?
want to reel the conversation in a little bit because I was talking about wow, as an economic system to
Yeah.
go from illiterate peasants,
Hmm.
with no form of democracy, no representation.
Mm-hmm.
They were just being like
Yes.
killed, starved. They
Yeah.
had so many famines every 3 years. They were having a famine in Russia. To
Yeah.
go from that to a space superpower in just like 3 or 4 generations,
Wait,
the
Is
they went to
amazing.
And they
space first,
fail. Why'd
and
they
what?
fall?
No, they went to space first, and what? What were they doing for their people? Their people were suffering. Okay, congrats. They went to
people
space
in the
first.
U.S. were suffering
Yeah,
as
people
well.
everywhere are
They're
So
suffering,
still
but there was
suffering.
less people in the U.S. suffering than there were in
Okay,
the
that's
USSR.
you literally just negated your point because, like you said, people everywhere are suffering.
yeah,
There you
so
Yes,
go.
but you
There,
have to
you
look at
said it.
how
It
many
came out
more
of your
people are
mouth.
suffering. Where do
gay
you have
people
a
were
better?
Bro, didn't
suffering
they
in the
fight?
U.S.
U.S.
Black
What?
people were suffering in the U.S. Indigenous people were suffering in the U.S. Women
Can I
couldn't
just
open a
add one
bank
more thing,
account.
right?
But look how
During this
look how they handled
timeline,
Chernobyl. They
And
cut
I
phone lines,
even
and
though
Chernobyl.
those
oh my
Okay,
people
what are
This
you
gosh.
is
talking
so
about?
even though those
crazy.
people were suffering, right? There were still far less people suffering in the U.S. than there
No,
were in the
that's
You,
not
USSR.
true.
Are you
I,
kidding
I,
me, Jazz? You
I
think you'd
just,
rather live in the
I just want to say
USSR in the
one thing.
yeah,
I
1960s,
just
I
want
want
to
to
70s,
say
and
let
one
80s?
Jazz
thing.
talk for
I just want
a
to say
minute or
one
so.
thing. The U.S. already uses social systems. We already have so many social systems in our country. Medicare, the police, the firefighters. Literally, we use these systems regularly, and it works. They work, do they not? Your house burns down, guess what? You're going to have a team of people that's going to come and help you. And how do they get paid? Through our taxes.
You don't need
That's
to
how
have
it
two fire
works.
departments. You don't need competition in every single
Exactly.
industry. It's
Like,
just
no, I still want to get back to what you were saying about this society that brought itself up in what timeline?
in like 40 years, we're
So
talking like
wait,
1920 to 19 like 70, 1980, whenever
wait,
the
didn't in that timeline they were fighting a certain mustache man as well? Weren't they in a war?
yeah, 26 million people were
My
killed
goodness.
in the
When the U.S.
USSR in
wasn't
World War
fighting the
II.
Mustache Man too? What are you talking about,
We did
bro?
I'm
not lose 26 million people. I mean, this is the whole reason why we were the ones at the helm of the
and weren't
Marshall
they fighting
Plan.
them 10 years before
Because
the
we were
U.S.
not
decided to
destroyed
join?
like Europe and the USSR, where China was destroyed by Japan. Like incredible casualty levels. So I want to focus on one thing as well.
That's
Two
crazy.
thirds of production capacity. I want everyone who's in this live to just know
Yeah.
the USSR killed more Nazis than anyone else in any other force in World War
Yes.
II. They lost more people, and they lost two-thirds of their. I mean, two-thirds of their factories, two-thirds of their agriculture.
And
It's
now I
just
want everyone
Wow.
to look up the
it's
Lend-Lease Act
incredible.
so everyone can know how Stalin's
Wow.
ass got saved. The United States, along with with Britain, saved
That's not
Stalin's ass
addressing
with the
anything, though.
Lend-Lease Act. Look up FDR's Lend-Lease Act with the Soviet Union. We gave them hundreds of millions of dollars worth of military equipment, money,
Oh, hey,
everything that
James.
that country needed, that the Soviet Union needed. We saved their ass.
Bro.
Yeah, I'm
Bro.
glad the U.S. actually did something good when we joined World War II. And the only way we joined World War II is really an interesting piece of history as well. So Hawaii had always been considered a territory, not a state. up until that point, and it was the U.S. The culture was very isolationist at the time. We were saying, "Oh, that's Europe's war for Europe." Like, I don't know about this, Japan's war in Asia, whatever.
Mhm.
And it was actually a really smart political move when Pearl Harbor was bombed. This the presidential speech about it was really reframing the situation. It's like, this is an attack on the U.S. And that was, as a colonizer, that's like how we kind of flipped our own script and started caring
Of course, it
about
was an
Hawaii.
attack on the U.S. They sunk like more than half of our fleet. What do you mean? How was that not an attack on the U.S.?
I'm
It,
saying I'm not saying attack on the U.S. Sorry, you're right. That was kind of ambiguous. I mean, they're saying like this is an attack on our homeland when in reality, like this is just a territory. But yeah, this is a fair distinction. I thought it was. I guess what I'm saying is it's interesting how we kind of showed our hand.
Right.
This is just like we're saying, Germany's so evil, Japan is so evil for having colonies and taking territories and stuff, and we did that in Hawaii. Yeah. So I would like to just point out that the bad things happened in the USSR, bad things happened in the US, bad things happened in China, bad things happened in Japan. Doesn't mean we cancel the whole country, cancel the whole economic. Well, I think everyone could agree we can cancel the UK. That's okay to do. They're just horrible colonizers, bad culture. I don't know. We can cancel the UK, right?
why would you cancel the UK? If you didn't
Because
I'm
that
not
colonize
kind of
these
sucks.
disagreeing.
throughout history, there have been lands that have been colonized and those that have colonized them. There have been winners and losers in war. What do you mean? Like this is just an unfortunate
Oh
part
no.
of
Yeah, it's the
human
There are
history of
history.
the
real
world.
people
Is
Everybody's
anyone
who,
else
colonized everybody.
picking
oh
up
my
on this?
God.
That's why the most important
Yes.
thing for any sovereign nation to have is national security. You want to have strong national security. If we didn't have that, they would just take us over. Russia would take us over. China would take us over.
So
You need to
wait, I
have
have a
strong
question.
national
Are
security.
you on the right and you're kind of against like big government and stuff, maybe?
I mean, you'd have to define big government, but yeah, I'm for less government intervention. Not no,
Okay.
but less government intervention
So
and
I
you're
more
not like
agree with
private
a
it.
full
enterprise.
libertarian or something. I'm just wondering.
No, I'm a right wing conservative.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I feel like their kind of priorities on the right have shifted. Before Republicans, their whole thing was small government, no government overreach.
Yeah.
Now there's a little bit of hypocrisy when it comes to this now with
I
these new ideals and this new generation.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
just
I'm
added
not
an
saying no government at all. I mean, like
yeah.
I said earlier, there's ignorant people. I mean,
I'm saying
we
no
gotta have
government at
some kind
all
of system
eventually.
over
We'll get
us.
Yeah,
there.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
should have no government in the
No government.
future.
So
Yeah,
you
that's what
support anarchy?
communism's
Yeah,
all about,
we
baby.
You
also
support anarchy?
Uh, so I support communism, which is an end goal of a stateless, classless, moneyless
Oh my
society with the
God.
abolition of private property. In order to
So
get
outside
there,
of
we need to
have
have a socialist transition phase from our
okay, wait a
capitalist
second. Wait a
reality.
second. Let's be
Yeah.
realistic here. Outside
So
of the
you want to be
theory,
like China, where you're working for a
outside
dollar a day,
China's
What?
fascist,
locked in a
not communist.
factory? That's awesome,
Yeah,
buddy.
but China's
China's
fascist,
labeled
not
themselves
communist.
as communist, but they're not actually communist.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
one thing we
they're run
probably
by a
agree on.
communist party. They
Yeah.
have a socialist market economy. They have more state-owned enterprises than any other
Yeah.
country in the world. They
But
have
they're
a lot
still
of
not
Sweatshops
completely
where Nike's made,
communist.
Nike shoes.
I mean, the quality of life, like by several different indices, has gone up
No,
astronomically
their
in
poverty
China for
class makes
everyday
ours look like they
people.
were living in luxury.
So they actually have eliminated more poverty than any other country in the history of the world. So, like you have, like you were saying earlier, Americans need to stop being lazy and do more work. That's what they're doing in China, and they're becoming a lot richer because of it, and they're investing in their infrastructure and in their country and their healthcare and their education because of it, because they have a little bit more control over their economy. It's not perfect, but
Did you know they have factories over there where the workers actually sleep? My dad actually got asked to go over business there a couple years ago. He said that they had factories over there, and the workers were paid a dollar a day, and they lived in the factory because they could not walk home and walk back because they'd lose their jobs. but they had 50 beds in the factory for people to live in. That's a good form of communism,
Yeah,
isn't it?
so I mean, you know that I don't support something like that, right? But this is
But you just said you want us to end up in a communist state.
so communist, like what I was trying to say is a stateless, classless society is the ideal goal. Communism is moving beyond the need to, what the right corner was talking about. You need to have like national security. That should be every nation's biggest concern. I'm hoping that at some point in the
I
future, a
feel like
hundred
you
years
don't know
from
what
now, 200 years
communism
from
is,
now,
buddy.
you won't need to worry about like your enemies invading because everywhere will be developed adequately, everyone will be educated adequately, we'll
Yes.
all be more or less on the same page.
And
Yeah, we'll be
people,
hugging
and
trees and sniffing our farts and laughing around, right?
That would be cool. Yeah, farting and laughing would be a lot better
so
than
fun. So
yeah,
much better than war and
yeah, war and
famine
working a
and
dollar a
poverty.
day. I added someone new to the chat. Let's hear what he thinks about he or I'm not sure
Hi,
thinks about socialism.
can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Oh, hey everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good. How are you?
Great.
We're great,
Doing good.
bud.
I'm the right corner's biggest fan.
Cool. Oh, I didn't realize that the right
He's
corner a TikToker.
biggest fan. Yeah, I'm
Podcaster.
Yeah, he's
I
got
love all
150
his.
something thousand followers.
Oh,
Hell
cool.
yeah. He's the best TikToker in my opinion. My favorite one is the one where he responds to a random person with 0 followers and owns them with his facts and logic. I love him. RC, I love you. I'm your biggest fan. All right, man. Is he
Cool.
there? Damn.
Oh, did I
You-
is
I
it
think you
did I mute
muted him.
him?
Don't take me away from my friend. Hey, RC.
No,
You
I'm
quit your
here.
love
Oh.
phase with it and tell us why you want to speak in here. It was cool you're his biggest fan, but please to tell us you didn't join the box just to tell him you're his biggest fan.
No. I find this an interesting. I mean, I'm a poli sci student, so I love. So the overall, I would call myself a social democrat. Do you guys? I imagine you guys all know what it is, right? What social democracy is.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Um, So I would consider myself that. Overall, I do want to say the one thing based on what I've been hearing, what I would say I don't quite think is, I don't think communism is going to happen, personally. I just don't think it's possible. I don't think Marx would have even predicted social democracy or fascism.
Social democracy already existed at the time.
Uh,
And like Napoleon was fascist. I don't know if
Oh,
they called it the same things, but they were like
I mean,
social democrat parties and
well, because
stuff,
fascism first happened because
right?
of Benito Mussolini. Well, he came up with the idea overall, like the one that made the symbol that. So I mean, I guess, but overall, I don't think Marx would have also predicted the Great Depression would have gotten us out of that. So I do think overall, I just don't see communism happening in like I don't see us transitioning to that. I could see something resembling market socialism being the outcome. Um, but that's going to take, like, I don't think any of us are going to be alive once we transition to that because it's just, I don't see us transitioning from capitalism in this lifetime.
Jeez, I keep pressing the
Um,
button.
it's just, I kind of can't imagine a revolution happening or like something like that. It's just
No,
kind of hard to
I think
imagine.
we'll witness, like, we're in late stage of capitalism right now. I think we'll witness the collapse, but I don't know if we'll be able to see it rebuilt into something that is
Yeah,
more socialist.
it doesn't have to
But
happen in our lifetime, right?
yeah, but also our parents and their parents weren't even talking about this kind of thing. They were all for surviving through capitalism. They weren't even having these I mean, these conversations were happening, but not as widespread as they are now.
Yeah,
Um,
because they were hunter gatherers and did their own shit and never give a fuck about the
my
government.
I
grandparents
mean,
were hunters and gatherers.
Well,
This
my
is
my
funny.
great grandparents. I'm a little older than you, dear. I mean, people I come from, they did their own stuff. They farmed. They lived on a farm. They raised animals. They did their own thing. They didn't need people to take care of them like the government. I'm not saying no government. I do want a little bit of government, but people 100 years ago didn't need government to give them handouts.
Well, people can't live like that anymore
So I
because,
wanna I
like, give
wanna
me
just
some
say
land and
this.
I'll something
Yeah,
like
I don't.
that.
my household income is $100,000, and still cannot afford to purchase a house in 2023. We barely can
Thank
save.
you.
After we pay for health insurance,
So
taxes, everything, taxes, which, by the way, we don't really see any outcome of. Like what we're paying into our military and Medicare, which they say is going to collapse and that we won't have. So it's, where
can
are they
we
going?
can
What are
we
they
all
doing?
agree on? Can we all find this topic to agree on, which is science? Right?
Yes.
Everybody's agrees on science, right? We
I
can all
mean,
in this chair agree on
And
science,
then
I would
after
be
this, I'm
careful
gonna
with
let
saying that
James talk.
everyone believes that, but yes.
No.
Yeah.
right? I would like to say that the things we're talking about are not just theory. A lot of it is science from observation of
Yeah.
the methods using science, using the
Yeah.
analytics that we get from that.
The
So
scientific
this is not
theory.
just like a
Yeah.
theoretical understanding. This is talking about a process that society goes through.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the evolution of different, economies and people's relationship with the means of production. This is history.
Yes.
I want to let James talk. How do you feel about socialism, James?
I'm pretty down with it. You know, I don't mind it. I think it's pretty chill, all things considered. That's my bold take of the day. I'm loving this. I'm just listening in and waiting for a moment to chime in. So just bear with me.
Okay, cool. Cool. We have someone who's vibing with socialism now.
I swear I saw his profile picture and I thought I was going to go the other way. I'm happily surprised,
Nah,
James.
see
No,
that's the key. It's a bait and switch.
here's what I find interesting, right? You would say the host. You would say you're a socialist or a communist. You are a communist.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, support socialism is a goal to communism.
Oh
so
goodness.
so wait. Don't react to that. Just let me finish. So am I, right? And in my belief system, right? There's what I believe. There is what I believe, and then there's also what I believe is possible for me to enact as an individual.
Right.
As a communist, right? I believe in not equality. I think that's like that that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't encompass the layers of the ideological position that I believe. So I believe in equity, and what that framework allows me to operate within proximity in my community and the people I care about within that framework. So an example of that is I'm the tallest guy in my house. So I'm the tall guy who reaches up and gets stuff. So nobody has to use the extra spoons to get the stool, which other people. Now we all have access to the stool, but why would I make them use that extra energy when I'm right there and can reach up? That's just a small example of practicing equity. Men practice this in relationships all the time, even under the rules of patriarchy, where we carry the heavier stuff because by design, we're usually stronger in those situations, correct?
Okay, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying.
So communism in itself, like you could talk about all these grand ideas of like where it's applied society, but like from a communist individual perspective, there is plenty of text that tells you that this is things that you apply to yourself as an individual and try to create ripples in society that reflect that attitude. If I want society to increase in its capacity to care for one another, then I have to be an active beacon to do that. And I think that's what gets lost in the conversation on a grand scale, talking about human equity.
Totally. A lot of things come to my mind of things I do like day to day, things I can get involved in that helps kind of me live my ideals. I'm trying to get more active in this community garden near where I live. It's like an anarchist community garden where they really just kind of like people just come in and do everything. There's no like leadership and there's no, they don't have permits even, but they've been there like for 35 years and just have a beautiful community garden. And they're all really like down for the revolution there. They have like Shay posters everywhere and stuff.
Have you ever heard of the group Buy Nothing? It's all over the state.
Yes.
And I love it. Basically,
it's amazing.
You take what you want, you give what you want, everything's free.
That's communism.
Yeah,
Baby.
and and a lot. It's on a very small scale, right? But even people who are part of this group do not realize what they're partaking in. That what they're partaking in is very much communist in what we as
It's an
Thank
socialists
you.
economy.
believe.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is what I'm trying to explain. It's not even like you could take your ideological position and measure it against society or politics or any of that.
Right.
But the thing that you believe, if you truly believe in the thing that you claim will lead to more freedom and liberation, then you have to practice that
Yeah.
consistently and deal with the
But she
contradictions
just said
within
the
it.
key word though, that it's in a small scale. It's never gonna work on a big scale. The moment you scale that up, your society is gonna
A
collapse.
thousand people
Yeah.
doing that
This
in your community is large scale, though.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
No,
I
she
mean,
just said it
my
was
group
small
got
scale.
so big they literally just made it into three different groups. Like it's constantly growing, it's constantly
yeah.
evolving. There's constantly new rules put into place. Of course, it's always things
Yeah,
like
but you
this
understand for
that people,
communism to exist in the United States, you're gonna have to overthrow the government we currently have.
yeah,
Do
Yeah.
you understand?
Wait,
Wait, do
wait,
you
wait, wait, wait.
understand what I'm talking about? Wait,
Wait,
yes,
you
but do
just
you
so
understand what I'm talking
nonchalant.
about?
The host just so nonchalantly is like, "Oh yeah, like you're gonna
Okay,
overthrow the
but
government we
no one
currently
thinks it's
have."
going to be
sir,
pretty. Any real
sir,
communist or socialist knows that at the end of the day, that means war. That
That
means,
means
Yeah.
murder. That means
yeah, we
sir,
know
Yeah.
I am
everyone.
absolute
attempting.
carnage.
Wait
And
a
you're
minute,
just like
Yep.
so
sir.
Possible
nonchalant about
genocide.
you're
So
no. You're just
Can I
nonchalant
just
about
point
that
out?
until it actually happens, and then you're
Oh
gonna
my
have a
God.
bunch of right wing people with the firearms that they do have, and your communist
Yeah, but we don't even have to talk
your
about
communist
that.
revolution in the U.S. is gonna last all
I'm
but
not even
10
talking about
seconds.
that.
It's gonna last
Wait, I'm
all
not
but
even
yeah.
10
talking about that.
So
Wait, 1 second.
let's.
1 second,
We were talking
because I
about.
need to. I need to make this clear, right?
Yeah.
I did not even put it towards politics. I
Hmm.
applied it to the
Very important.
individual and how these
Mm-hmm.
things operate, right? And you brought
Mm-hmm.
up a group called Buy Nothing. And I
Hmm.
explained that, like, I want to make this clear that, like, that Buy Nothing group may seem small scale, but to the
Mm-hmm.
person who got the thing that they needed for
Someone who got a
free,
baby stroller
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't afford.
And I just want to
that
say
is,
that this group
like,
started in one community and now it's
It's in
nationwide.
it's in every
right,
state.
Yeah,
There's several groups in every city.
right,
They're
wait,
done by like the zip code in New York City. It's insane how like if you someone was able to measure
it's
the
the same way in
value of that
Austin.
economy,
Yeah.
it
right,
would
no,
it's insane.
I mean, brand
no,
new
so
furniture,
And you're just giving it
iPads,
to your
the
neighbors.
phones,
list goes on.
everything.
I just got a new coffee grinder and some other stuff, but I just want to make it clear. Like, if I bring up an example that is people in community doing the thing that costs them nothing for someone else, and I say, like, hey, that's an example of communism, why would you even drift away from that example?
Yeah, it's fun to talk about things on such like a big societal scale and talk about like war and revolution and politics
Right,
and history and all that stuff. But it's I think we ignore things that can actually affect our
right.
day-to-day lives if we focus
Mm-hmm.
too much on that. Someone in the comments said, "Buy Nothing is run
I,
by the people. It's capitalism."
I do wonder
Listen,
though,
Like,
how
without
would
meaning.
scarcity be
I just
addressed?
want to say, I had a friend in her apartment during the freeze in Texas when our government absolutely failed us and people were dying and starving because they had no electricity. They that my friend, she had just had a baby, her apartment burned down, and that group came together and they gave her every single thing she needed, money, clothes, baby formula, everything she needed for a new place. And they were not, she was not the only person we did that for either.
That's
how many
beautiful.
times, how many
Yeah,
people shovel snow and do
that's
work
beautiful.
for their elderly or disabled neighbors for free? I don't care what you call that. That's layered and caring for your community. It's
And
communism to me.
And if you're not a proponent of socialism, communism, you might not understand what we're getting at. We're getting at this value to work other than money. People want to do things they care about. People want to not be alienated from their community and their neighbors. One of the rules of the Buy Nothing Facebook groups is that you have to drop it off in person. You can't just like leave something somewhere, and you have to at least interact and like meet your
Again, this
neighbors.
sounds nice
Yes,
in theory, right? But when
It's
you
nice in
force,
it's
practice, man.
working.
yeah, no, it's
We're
not.
not. We're
It's
not
not. No,
talking about
wait. He
theory.
just said it's nice in practice. Was it
To
nice
be
in
totally
practice
fair,
under?
It's
Was it
capitalism
work.
doesn't even
nice?
sound all
Was it
that hot
nice
in
in
theory.
practice in
Like,
Mao Zedong's China?
I'm
Where
literally
I mean,
talking
it's not.
about about
It's
buy
not. What do you
nothing
mean it's
groups are
nice in
nice in
practice, though?
practice.
Where has
It's
communism ever
happening right
been?
now.
Where
Jazz
has
just told us a story
No, you're
where
talking
It
about
buy
like
nothing
exists.
group saved her
no.
neighbor's
Wait a
life.
second. You're talking about a little. You're talking about like a little community garden. I'm talking about
Yeah.
on a big scale. When has communism ever been good in practice for a country?
There's
Vietnam,
macro and
I think
micro.
in China when it improved the life
Wait,
expectancy
you said
faster than
Vietnam. Let's
anyone.
no, just like one at a time. You said Vietnam. Does Vietnam have a government? So
Yeah,
then
it's
it's
a
not
communist.
communist because you
I
said
think it's
communism
important to
is.
note
Wait,
that,
wait,
like,
wait a second. Hold on a second.
I
You
mean,
said
it's
communism
really
is
important to define the
stateless
fact
and
that there's a
moneyless, right?
transitionary
You
state
said
between the
communism is
socialist and
stateless and
I've
communist
told
moneyless.
him
Why
that
is
too, James,
you
and
said
entirely
you said
different.
communism is
Yeah,
stateless and
communism's run by
moneyless?
the state.
No, wait a second. The host defined communism as stateless
So I
as
think
a
it's really
stateless,
important to
moneyless
note that,
society,
like,
and
went over this definition a
named
million times.
Vietnam that
oh
has a
boy.
government and it has money. So how is that communist?
let's let James explain what socialism and
Yeah,
Well, no,
so
communism
like
you
is.
it's
explain it.
very
You
very
define
simplistic
communism
very
as a
I
simple
can
stateless,
to
see that's
moneyless
understand.
democratic
society. Why can't you
socialism.
defend your position?
He's
Why can't
defining.
you? Why
He's
can't?
Like
No,
telling you
I'm
how
literally,
but
communism.
I'm
I'm
talking
just
about.
I'm trying to
I'm
like
talking to the
James
host.
is
The host defined communism as stateless, moneyless
stateless,
society.
classless, moneyless society.
Okay, so then why did
Socialism
you
is the
name
But it's
Vietnam as a
translation.
controlled by the
communist?
state.
So
Well,
why
if I
did you
can
name
talk, I just
Vietnam? Yo, hold on. So why did you name Vietnam as a communist country?
I didn't. I said you didn't even say
I said,
communist
give me a
I'm gonna
specifically.
go back
communist
and look
country
again.
that has been good in
That's
practice,
actually
and you
not
said
what
So
you
why do we
said.
have to devolve into that layer of conversation when we
because
Yeah.
just explained
communism has
communism?
never
But
worked.
wait,
It has never
It's
worked.
sir,
never
all you
existed.
want to do is
You
talk
just said
about how communism
Vietnam.
does. I
I
know.
asked you to
Listen,
give me an example.
I
Why
get
are
where you're
y'all
coming
talking over
from.
me? I
I've
was
had
talking
this
Okay.
to the
conversation for
host.
20
I
years.
was talking to
Wait a
the
minute.
host.
I hear where you're coming from. I've had this
Why do you have to
conversation
be so
for 20
feverish to
years.
defend the
It
host?
seems as if you're only interested in talking about how communism doesn't work. And anytime I give you examples of where it's practiced, you divert away from that.
So
And I'm just
so
wondering
show
why.
me show me a
So
country
Also,
that
like, it's
adopted
notable that there's
communism.
like actually like whole
Show me
books
a
that
country that
completely
adopted
describe exactly the
communism then.
question you're answering in
Show
very
me a
shorthand form.
show
Like,
me a country that adopted communism.
Hey, okay, so the right corner, I'll just start from the beginning. Maybe you didn't understand, like maybe I didn't explain it very well, what I'm trying to say. So the question you asked was where did it work? You didn't say where did communism be a country or something specific like that. So I'm talking about socialism, which is the transition phase to communism, which is the stateless, classless, moneyless society that has abolished private property because they no longer have the need for those
Yes, you're
things.
talking about
If we
an
tried to
you are
implement communism
speaking.
overnight, it would
Are
just
you an
revert to
ideologue or are
feudalism
you a
because we
realist?
wouldn't have developed our means of production to the
Okay,
point. We wouldn't have
jeez.
educated people enough
So
to that
has
point. So it's
communism
really
ever
important to
existed in a
have
country?
socialism
Has an
before you
entire
have.
state ever been communist? Has an
No,
entire state? No, it
communism has
hasn't.
never existed unless you're
But it's
talking
gonna
about
work
primitive
though. But it's gonna
communism.
work, right? It's gonna work.
So what? I don't know
What's your
what you're
basis? What's your
asking.
basis that communism's gonna work? It's never. You just admitted it's never existed.
Primitive
Just
communism was
for
literally how we
existence
evolved
doesn't
to
mean it doesn't
function.
work.
But no, so then it has existed because you
How,
just said it's never
what?
existed.
I
So
actually,
has it?
I think you were talking over me and you didn't hear me. So do you want to just give me
You
like a
just
minute?
said communism has never existed. You just said that.
And then at the end, when you started talking over me, I said, unless you're talking about primitive communism, which came before feudalism and all these other economic modes.
What is primitive communism? Did Karl Marx coin that term? Because that was way
Yeah.
before Karl
literally,
Marx
No,
existed.
Yes.
that's a Karl Marx term, primitive communism. He's talking about,
Primitive
so
communism. So you're talking about cavemen? Cavemen were communists? Is that your
yeah,
argument?
they weren't feudalists.
Well,
So if you
no,
want to
he's talking
describe
about
their,
African and indigenous communalism.
yeah.
He's not
Yeah,
talking about
that really worked out
cavemen.
well, right? That really worked out super well.
All right, so listen,
Bro,
I just
they
want to make this
didn't
clear.
have like writing systems. This is just history. You're like looking back
You mean that they?
2,000 years in history,
Right.
4,000
I
years in
want to make this
history,
clear. He's going to keep
50,000
us
years in
buried in this
history.
conversation, though.
I
This is a
know.
Of
circular
course, because I'm
conversation.
throwing the
But
communism
wait,
argument back in your
no,
face.
sir,
I'm showing you how dumb
this is not
policy it is.
wait, but this is not a productive way to have this
Yeah.
conversation. I am really trying to
He's also
elevate this
talking over me. Wow.
understanding between me and you, where you get the things that I've said about communism as an ideology, as a theory, is applied to the person first. The person, me, and then implemented into my proximity, my neighborhood, my community. I gave you several examples of what communism is in your community, and you keep
Yeah.
devolving back to has a communist country ever existed? And it's just like it's
Because you're
counterproductive.
talking about
Being an
communism on a
anti-communist is
micro
low-key like the
level.
easiest thing
You're
in the world.
speaking
You can
about.
say like 3 sound
Oh
bites and
my
then listen to
God.
absolutely fuck all of everything else that's going
Yeah.
on in the
So
Please
to
read a
respond
book.
to respond to I don't know if I should call you you're black or would you rather me call you.
His username is your black scapegoat. So I
Okay.
guess you can
So
just call him scapegoat if
Call
you
me
want.
goat.
The goat.
so to respond to I'm not gonna call you goat. So to respond to the guy in the bottom box, then you said that communism, quote unquote communism, has worked on a micro level in like your community.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cute and all. Now multiply that and have communism be the entire system that a country runs on.
So there you
Who's
go
to say that's
again.
gonna
You just
work?
kind of don't understand what communism is. You said a country runs on. This is just not the goal. This is not what we're talking
So what's
about.
so
And
you don't want a country
again,
anymore?
what
No
I'm talking
borders.
about is
No.
socialism. This whole thing you said, where is it working? Socialism with the
Right.
goal of communism is really cool. It works really well pretty much
It works
everywhere it was
really well.
implemented. Yeah. What metric do you want to talk about? What's a metric that you can measure how an
Communism works
economy
really
is
well. So
working?
It's scary when
if I go shovel my neighbor's
Anecdote
driveway,
time. Here
that's
we go.
communist. So shoveling
Hey,
my
the right
neighbor's
corner,
driveway
answer
is
the question.
communism.
Let's talk about a metric you can use to measure mathematically,
Sure, give me.
scientifically, how well an economy is working for the people of that
I did point
economy.
out it's a
Give me a
science. I
metric.
did point out that
So
it
your
is a
argument
science.
for communism is a community garden that has worked out.
So that's not my argument for communism. We were having a tangential conversation about living our ideals and living our values. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is any metric that you would use to measure how an economy is functioning for the people who are participating in it?
The fact
Do
that
you,
you can have people come from countries
can
with
you give me a metric, sir? I'm literally going to kick you if you don't give me a
you
metric. Come
just
on.
asked me how can I show you an economy that's working well? You can
No,
have
I
people
asked you a
with
metric, a
nothing.
metric, a
I
metric. Do you
can
know
I'm
what that
tell
giving
you
word
you a
one,
means?
metric
I can tell
that
you
the
one,
fact that we
the
have the
amount of
largest that
children
I'm
being
giving you if
born
you'd
per
let me answer
year.
the question, you're talking over me. The fact that you can have the largest immigrant population in the world, have the most immigrant-owned businesses in the world, have people come here with nothing in their pockets and become a wild success for them and their family. That's a metric that you can
What
measure
percentage?
how
Is the
good your
argument
economy
here
is working
essentially
for
that
the
like
people in your
communist
country.
societies don't have immigration? Because that's like a really just like
Tell me a communist society that
analysis
exists.
of
You just
it.
said communist societies that don't have immigration. Tell me
I
one
want,
communist society that
Brother, I think you
exists.
need to
I want
understand
to
what a joke
say,
is.
You
But
just tell
also,
me a communist society that exists.
my guy, if you let
okay,
me
For
talk
every
for
I
like
have
country
a
has
30
metric.
seconds, this would be
I,
really chill. I'm like cracking eggs, making a late night dinner, just listen to you sound like a jackass, and I'd really appreciate like 30 seconds of
That's
fucking
a nice
conversation
insult. So the
time.
host asked me a question for a metric. I
No, I
answered his
recognize
question.
that, my guy, but you've been talking for like 15, 20 minutes straight about absolutely fuck all, and it's like frankly somewhat
Okay,
embarrassing because you
yeah,
have a baseline
that you can
understanding of
keep
what you're
insulting
discussing.
me. You can keep insulting me. You want to shove both of those
My
eggs in your
guy, I've been
mouth?
trying to give you
Can
a
you fit
logical
both of those eggs in your
conversation, but you
mouth, by
got
the way?
absolutely
Can
jack
you
shit
fit
to
both
say
of those
beyond like
eggs in
just
Are
your
you
mouth?
you're
putting
talking
on
Yeah,
concise and you just
Sunny side
guys,
up?
calm down and
guys,
need to like listen
capitalism
for
is
a
when
baseline
immigrants.
explanation.
No, you asked me to give you a metric. I just gave you a metric.
I
Okay,
can give you
Look
a
at the
so
metric.
success. Look
high
at the
You know
immig.
what?
success of your immigrant population.
Homie
That's a
just
metric.
talking to
I
himself. This
can,
is fucking
dude,
I
you're
just
just
he
straight
just
ridiculous.
up
asked me to give him a
monologuing.
metric. I gave him a metric. The
So
success of
so
our
it's
immigrant
high
population.
immigration. What if those
No, the
immigrants are?
success of the immigrant population.
What do you mean success? How do you measure success? Is my question from the beginning. What does success
You can look at
mean?
financial success. We're talking about the economy, right? The economy.
How does
Like how many
economy?
immigrants have started a successful company in the United
Okay, I'm
States?
actually going to go ahead and just give some metrics because you're just talking like success is a metric of success,
A
which really
financial
doesn't make
success of
sense.
immigrants in the United States. You can see how many immigrants
Financial
started a
success
company.
is a way to
Can you mute
measure
him for a
success of an
second while you
economy.
You
explain?
don't
No, you
Yeah.
understand
asked
what a
me to
Can you
give
mute
you a
metric
him?
is.
metric. I gave you one metric.
You don't
This,
understand what a metric is.
yeah, so I'm going to give examples of a metric now. So here's
Yeah,
some
so I'm gonna
examples of
mute you so you can't talk. That's cute.
yeah, so I can give you examples of a metric. Just chill for a second, man.
Dude just didn't like my metric because it disproves your point. That's
No,
super
because
cute.
it's not.
Success isn't a metric of how do you measure
You
success.
can
I'm
look at how
gonna
many successful companies immigrants.
Okay, that was getting a little bit too annoying. I'm trying to be polite here. I don't want to kick people. It's not fun. I
I hate
really
like
liked having him in the
feeling like a
chat.
mean person during Ramadan, but that guy was like An absolute
Oh my god, I was
dumbass.
gonna say the same thing. Like,
But
Feels
he's being
like
super nice right now. It's a Ramadan. Like,
I kind of feel like his argument could have had potential. I mean, it is true what he says, the capitalism, like the way he was measuring the success, but the issue was he was just not letting anyone talk, so he kind
yeah.
of he
The
kept
thing
So
is too,
escaping, and
like
that kind
he
of killed all his
fundamentally.
arguments.
The thing is here too, and I'm sorry if you hear my like cracking eggs in the background. The
No,
fundamental
you're
problem
good.
of his argument is he's like it's a false binary of like either you're in a capitalist system or you've established like a successful communist
Yeah.
society.
yeah.
And it entirely negates the material reality that we've known since like literally like Lenin, which, or even before Lenin, which is you have transitionary states and that there's a defined difference between like socialism or like lower phase communism and actual like an idealistic higher phase communist society that would exist after the entire globe has transitioned to socialism and has had time to really begin to transition to something more egalitarian in nature that is not necessarily entirely reliant on labor inputs. Right. And it's like this
beautifully
is
put,
explained
yeah.
in like literally like 15 fucking pages in like
Or
understanding Leninism, but this or like or whatever the hell. Because I don't have it in front of me right now. But
or
it's like it's amazing because it's these like same 3 or 4 sound bites that just get like thrown up in the exact same fucking arguments.
And I had to beg him to give me some kind of
Well,
metric,
and the
but
thing is like, and this
I'm
is the
gonna
thing
list a
too.
couple metrics real quick, just
Another,
so people in the audience know what we're talking about, because there might be
yeah.
some like right-wing people who
please.
just don't know what we're talking about. Metrics of a success of an economy for the people who are participating in it. The question I asked him, so we could actually measure if socialist economies are serving their people, would be things like life expectancy, doctors
Mm-hmm.
per capita,
Average caloric
Yep.
intake.
average caloric intake, how much food are you getting, how healthy is the food, infant mortality rates,
Which, by the way, in all of these indicators, you look at socialist states as compared to their actual peers, they're running fucking
No,
circles around them.
you know what
it's
they say, like
insane.
the way you can see a society is healthy is by the children. How many children are they having? And in the US, the birth rate has just continually fallen.
That, and the funniest part
Can we
is,
all agree
Jazz,
that the government
oh
is
hey,
evil? They've always been bad towards us, the people. Can we agree on that?
the U.S.
What we're
government
seeing right
is
now is a
pretty
Yeah.
crap
bad.
show going on in front of our faces. Can we agree on that?
I hear you, Lil Miss Badass.
So imagine them controlling how much you can eat, how much your family can eat. To me, that's a scary scenario.
I
Telling
mean,
you
if
what
we're
That
your
thinking about it
family can
like
The
have
that,
for a
then
government
I
year.
mean,
wouldn't
it
that
already
is
does though.
I
Like,
can't
wait a
help
minute.
that,
Can
bro.
I just
Today,
explain?
I'm not functioning.
Can
I
I just
hear
explain a
you.
lot of the
It
stuff
makes
that
us a lot
people
easier
are
to
saying?
manipulate.
Like, can a lot of the stuff that you like that has been made, the claims that have been made about communist country. I just need to explain, like, from my point of view, that's been this country.
Yeah,
And I know,
and corporations do that already. Like the
you know,
corporations are
Stalin killed
pushing
through
people's
famine
wages down,
because
and
he
then they
had that
can't
power
afford
to
as
do
much
it.
food.
That's why when people say communism, they're scared of it because that's what they think of. What's happened in the past, what we've seen in the past, what's currently
no,
going
no.
on in
I'm
the
saying
future.
like I live in America and capitalism, and that's been my lived experience in this country.
I think the most majority of people in this country, if you're not in within the like top 1 to 10%.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And I want to point out one thing real quick about the right corner. Is there someone that has like a little bit of feedback, it sounds like, going from the mic to the speaker. But one thing about the right corner, he was saying that I appreciate that he came on. If anyone's a fan of his here, thanks for sticking around. I just had to kick him for a sec because it was too much. But he was saying that national security was the most important uh, thing a country can have because other countries will come and take your shit if you don't have national security, if you don't have the idea of a nation. And then he's saying, why has no one gotten rid of a nation, the idea of a nation, and just lived communally as a communist society if it's so great? Because exactly what he's saying, you have to have national security. You have to, in this global capitalist world, neoliberal world order, you have to have a nation or someone else will come and make you a nation.
Also,
So,
I
something I
wanted to go
really
back
do
to
want
the
to
buy
touch
nothing
real
point
quick is
too
the
after.
kind of immigration
okay,
debate that he was getting into. It's
we'll do that
important to note that
last.
like immigration flow is an incredibly complex topic with like multiple inputs, outputs, etc. Right? Things that are determining factors of like immigration. And in a lot of instances, like U.S. immigration, a lot of U.S. immigrants over like especially historically, but even now, are generally people who are seeking out a semblance of stability from a global South that is in
Yeah.
in every single way
destroyed, dismantled, reorganized under neoliberal institutions through the United States and things that exist with it, like the World Trade Organization. You have the World Bank. Sorry, the more like the World Bank, like the IMF thing. It's like that, right? You have literal U.S. intervention in majority of countries. When you look at like immigration flows to the United States, a lot of the countries that are actually seeing a lot of immigration flows, particularly from like Central and South America, are countries that have been devastated by like decades of U.S. imperialism, right? Like stating the amount of revenue flows, or the amount of immigration flows to the United States is not like, it's an inherently neutral factor that can only be interpreted one way or the other based on your own preconceptions or your own attempted argumentation.
And
So
it had
when
to
you
do
look
with
at that
I
as a
know
Jazz's
that.
point.
it's absurd.
You know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Because
But
Jazz
like,
is saying, like, the low birth rates we have here, that's why we have to bring in immigrants to supplant our workforce that's disappearing.
mhm.
And these people who are more desperate than people who've already lived here for a few generations.
It's why we're banning abortion, not because they're
Yeah.
religious. It's because their next generation of workers they're gonna be non-existent.
So
And
how many of y'all know about the Global 40 Trends report? Any of y'all know about that?
I think I
mm-mm.
saw a TikTok about it, where
So,
they basically they say what's gonna happen in the
well,
next.
yeah, it's like the trends over the next 20 years. In the
Yeah.
next 20 years, it talks about the low birth rate and the shift in uh, demographic. It talks about climate change, and it talks about society and social fragmentation, which is societal groups breaking down into smaller and smaller and smaller tribes based on religion, region, politics, education, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just interesting how, like, when it gets to the very end of it, it shows the flip in all these other countries, South American countries,
Right.
Middle Eastern countries. It shows their
Nigeria is going to be
population,
the biggest population,
right,
third biggest in a couple of
right,
years.
growing, and the workforce growing, and them becoming more modern, and like European and Western countries kind of declining.
What's
It
going
says that
on?
in the next 20 years.
I think I'm gonna start wrapping this up, but I will let everyone like maybe give a little 1 minute outro. I'm gonna bring, if the right corner wants to come in and like have a couple words at the end here, that's cool. If that's cool with everyone else, I'll just let everyone say something and then kick everyone and say goodnight.
Yeah, I just
All
want
right,
to
I'll
point
go
out
last.
like what the host is doing right now with the right corner. This is socialism. This is socialism.
How is
No,
this socialism? We're on a capitalist app.
I'm
Like, do you
saying.
even hear? Do you even think
Oh
before
my
you
God,
talk?
Doing the
are you
meme.
gonna
Let's
start
get it.
monologuing again?
Guys,
His values have
iPhones are
allowed you to come back
capitalism is
up
when
here.
iPhone.
Fuck, he got me. I'm using a phone. Shit.
Yeah, we would be using Huawei phones if our government actually let market competition enter the U.S. But you know, these like the Chinese state-owned company Huawei, it's like a market dominator
So
internationally. It's
would you
not
say
allowed
that
here.
crime is a result of poverty?
We're gonna at the right corner. If you want to just
Yeah, don't want to
like
respond.
lead us out, because I'm gonna turn it off in the next like
I can only
five
lead
ten
James out
minutes.
of the closet. I can help him with that.
If you want to just like say anything
Shit,
about,
I'm saying, God
give us
damn,
a.
he's hitting me with bangers. This is fucking sad. Like, oh my
I
God.
know, I know. He's doing the memes.
Motherfucker, this is the thing about reactionaries that bother me is the motherfuckers
Don't
never
get
graduate like
bothered.
sixth grade insults. Like I want to be hit with
I
something nice,
know.
but they can't give me anything out of high school.
I know. I
Like
keep getting
So,
like gay insults, and I'm
no,
like,
it's like, homie,
I
your
don't
entire
care.
ideology is built on hate, but you can't articulate anything past like a fucking 13-year-old reading level. It's embarrassing. It's fucking
Yeah,
so,
embarrassing.
so I'll
it's
say something
okay.
before you go. I want
Let's
to
go
thank
up
you.
the list. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank you for let me join in this conversation to begin with. I'm Black Scapegoat. I am a former Black Panther from Philadelphia. I
All
believe
right.
in the emancipatory sciences of Marxist Leninism, Maoism. Quite simply, I practice this in my life every single day in my community, and I have found that when
Show
I
him some
just
love,
take
y'all.
a part of my week, like mutual aid Monday. That's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm going to drop off books at the book nook. I'm going to hit the community fridge up. I'm going to go help my disabled neighbors and my elderly neighbors do their errands and stuff. I'm going to take a portion of myself and add it to my community. And it's not important
Fire.
that that work gets seen. It's important that I reflect it amongst other young men who look up to me. And that
Bravo.
is what I believe communism is. I'm out, y'all.
Thank you and good night. Thank you for joining tonight. And anyone who wants to see more of these in the future, hit the notification button in my profile, the little bell, and you'll see when I go live. Jazz, do you want to say anything? Thank you for
Yeah, I
sharing
just
your
want to
personal
say,
stories,
like,
by the way.
reverting back, like, seeing some of the comments, going back to one of the first things I said in the beginning, I shouldn't have to leave my home and my family and go to another country just because I want to live better and I want my family to have a good life. That's not a real solution to the problem. And also, socialism and communism, it is not government handouts. That's not, I don't know where you are getting this from, but just because a country is socialist or communist does not mean the people do not work. Yeah. Okay.
The work gets used for better things. It's not just given to, like, Bill Gates, George Soros, Jeff Bezos. All the work doesn't just go to them. It goes back into our society. It's beautiful. All right. Thank you for joining tonight. I appreciate all your input. And James, do you want to give us a little outro?
Yeah, sure. Might as well. So I think like we've learned a lot from this conversation, which is one that I think
Yeah.
reactionaries fundamentally are a bunch of bumblefucks. Other than that, I think socialism will win if this is our opposition. We're down for the cause and we are bound to be victorious. And the fact they're coping and seething in a comment section, I think is very evident of that fact. I feel very good about my position. I'm going to eat some damn good eggs on my little capitalist skillet, and I'm going to have a really good night. So thank you all for
Hey, I
listening
love
and
to hear
indulging.
it. Have a great night. Thank you for joining tonight. This was fun. And
Anytime. It's been wicked.
Lil Miss Badass. Sorry, you kind of caught us in the end here. I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about the Buy Nothing group. Anything you want to say real quick on our way out tonight?
It's just with any form of government, any socialism, any communism, any capitalism, someone's controlling it. You got to remember that. Someone's telling you how much you can eat. Someone's telling you. So it's nothing wrong with being a good neighbor. On a small scale, helping out your neighborhood become a better neighborhood is great. But on a bigger scale, we got to remember people like Stalin. That's all I got to say.
I hear you loud and clear. Thank you for joining tonight, Lil Miss Badass. Appreciate it. Appreciate your input. And Troy Belair, I just added you at the end. Sorry, we're cutting it off tonight, but
You're good. So I'm a
how you feeling?
conservative from Central Texas.
I'm
There
from
needs to be
Texas
a
too.
government, right?
Yeah.
A very small, powering government. And that's why I totally believe in. I don't ever think that straight up communism will work because it didn't work in Cuba, it didn't work in China. There are independent companies that are regulated by the state, right? And that's the only way I believe it's going to work. But there always needs to be community support and infrastructure in your local communities, and that's the only way anything is going to work. But you can't just have a free for all society where nobody owns anything, because there's always going to be that one person that fucks it up for everybody, and that's where then it starts tearing the community apart, and then you're back from zero.
I hear you. Those are some very real issues that affected different socialist projects throughout history. I mean, these are undeniable truths here. But I'm just going to go ahead and, before I close the live, I'm going to reiterate everyone what we mean when we're talking about socialism and communism. Some people use those terms interchangeably. What we're talking about, communism, is this end goal at some point in the future. We don't want to always live under government control. We don't want to rely on a government. We want to get to the point where we no longer need a government. How do you get there is the big question. A stateless, classless, moneyless society that's moved beyond the need for private property rights. So you can't own a factory other people work in and charge them to work there. You can't own other people's houses. You can't own other people's land that they work and live on. You can't own natural resources that everyone requires. That is our end goal. You can own your own home, own your own tools and machines you work on, own your own land that you use, but this private property owning other people's stuff and charging them to use it, which is capitalism, it's got to go. It's not good. It leads to monopolies, it leads to colonialism. So socialism is the means to that end. We live in capitalism, which came from feudalism, which was not good. Capitalism came a little bit better. Socialism, transition away from private property being king, capital money being king, toward communism, which is pro-humanity, pro-community, and pro-work, pro-labor. Everyone works and you get the fruits of your labor instead of all that going to the Bill Gates of your life, the Jeff Bezos of your life, the George Soros of your life. Those are capitalists. Just because you like some capitalists doesn't mean the whole system's good. These people should not be in charge of our country and of our lives. That's why we should do socialism. So thank you all for coming in tonight. This has been a really fun live. Go ahead and go in my profile and hit the bell notification button, and I will be going live most nights this week. Try to be uploading more content. Thank you all for joining in. I appreciate the comments, by the way. I haven't been able to respond to them, but I've been reading a lot of them. I appreciate the negative ones too, honestly. It's helping me understand where you guys are coming from. Good night, everybody.